Hey everybody, welcome back to James Draws Everything. I am James, you already knew that. Today, continuing with our spooky season series here, we're going to be drawing Halloween movie posters, one poster a day, all week. So happy Halloween. Hopefully you're enjoying this series here. And this movie today, is kind of an odd one, right? Kind of came out at like a weird time in history. We're going to be doing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. All right, so this one, extremely violent and unsettling. A lot of really crazy sort of violence is like amped up in the 70s. There, that's where you see a lot of the rise of all those famous like mob movies, and you see a lot of like the blaxploitation kind of films, and horror starts getting a lot more violent during this time. So just a crazy time in general in the United States, and also in cinema. So this one came out in 1974. So this is actually, I didn't even have this planned, but I guess this is the 50th anniversary of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was not alive when this came out, but that still makes me feel pretty old, right? 50 years, geez. And this is definitely one of those movies that, I don't know, if you want to really freak somebody out, right? You got your girl with you and you want to scare the hell out of her. First off, what the hell's your problem? What are you doing? No, show her this. It's horror classic. And kind of like the one we did yesterday, right? The Thing. I think a big reason why this movie was so successful was because of the kind of atmosphere that they sort of lay into the story, into the film. So a lot of successful horror movies are kind of like that, and part of that atmosphere is just kind of how low budget the movie was, right? So and kind of going with that low budget here. I'm going to make this poster a little grimy, so we're not going to just leave that white. We're going to do like a little bit of off-white with our yellow here for the background. And so the guy who directed this, was his name Ed Hooper. Shoestring budget. Like this, I think this movie was made on like $140K. In 1974 money, which is probably like $16.4 billion today, but who's counting with inflation and all. And it really actually adds to the just overall, it's kind of grimy, like filthy feel of this movie, because the way that it's shot almost makes you feel like it's like a documentary, right? There's not a lot of music, not a lot of like a background score in the film. And it almost feels like it was something that was done like on a home video, right? So kind of puts you right up close and personal with the events that happen here. And yeah, so the kind of like a big hook for this movie was that like the way they build it and the way it's kind of like promoted when the movie starts was that it was based on true events. So, you didn't have the internet or whatever to check this stuff back then. Probably just had like, I don't know, remember those old like movie magazines like the Fangoria and stuff like that. I don't know if that was around yet in the 70s, but that'd be your only way to verify, to fact check these baseless claims. But yeah, Texas Chainsaw Massacre takes place in Washington State. No, of course, Texas. And if you know anything about Texas too, that kind of adds to the atmosphere of the movie, because there are definitely places where you go way off the grid in Texas and you kind of run into some people that are like this. So there's like this family of like, I guess they're like cannibal, like, you know, real like hillbilly types that are they live out in this old creepy house in the middle of nowhere. And again, if you're in Texas, you know, you go about a couple 100 miles away from civilization, you know what I'm talking about. So there's like a group of young kids. Forget what they're doing, if they're just like on vacation or they're just traveling the country, something like that. Some 70s youth, up to no good. They end up out in Texas, right, like out in the middle of nowhere. And I think something happens, like their van breaks down, and somebody from this family shows up, and, you know, he says, "I can help you out." So they let him in the van, and they, if I remember correctly, I think like they went to get gas or something like that, or they needed something, and food or something like that. And then this guy is he's pretty odd, right? He's a bit of an oddball, but seems harmless enough, just kind of a weirdo. And we don't know it yet at the time, but this guy's father actually is working at this gas station, and they're kind of planning, like, I guess they do this a lot, to bring, you know, these unsuspecting teens over to this house, and then, you know, eventually massacre them. So yeah, there's a big old house, rundown, kind of in the middle of nowhere that they end up at. And yeah, that part is really weird, because, hold on, I just want to get his hand right here, because yeah, if you've ever been, like, you know, just off the beaten path anywhere in rural America, you've seen a million houses like this, where you just kind of wonder, you know, is somebody even living there? Like, what's going on? This place looks abandoned. So that kind of adds to, like, kind of just the weird kind of gut feeling that you get, this bad feeling. And then yeah, the group of kids, right, teens or whatever, they kind of know something's up when this guy, the guy that they picked up, right, to get to the gas station, he's acting really odd. I forget, he like, somebody I think got it cut or something. I'm doing all this from memory, guys, but forgive me if I'm wrong. But yeah, then he kind of like freaks out and gets all kind of like delirious when he sees the blood, and so they're like, get this weirdo out of here, and it's all downhill from there. So yeah, at this house, you know, they meet the rest of the family, the Texas Chainsaw family. And this guy here, right, he's kind of, I guess, the star of the show. I don't know if he ever has a name in the original movie, but just for posterity's sake, we call him Leatherface. Right, so this guy, he has like a butcher's, what do you call it? I guess like a fridge or whatever, full of like all these carcasses and stuff that he's kind of amassed over the years. And, you know, he wears people's faces. That's why he's called Leatherface. So getting that past the censors in the 70s, right? That movie probably wouldn't have existed 10 years earlier. But yeah, 70s, different time. You get a lot more leeway as far as what you can and can't show in movies and in all sorts of entertainment. And I had a few different choices I could have went with. Like, this movie has a lot of different posters. I always liked this one. Some of the other ones look a little little too cartoony for kind of what I'm going for here, but I like this one. This one's neat. Yeah, that the house that they actually end up in, that's like actually like a really nice house now. I think they use it for for like a bed and breakfast or something. I was watching some kind of feature like on this movie, and yeah, so the again, they made this on under $200,000, their budget. So I don't think they were really building a lot of sets or anything like that. They just worked with what they had. Hold on, let me just switch to a bigger marker here. Work on some of that solid black. Yeah, once they're in that house too, all hell breaks loose. Some of them get chased down by this Leatherface guy, and that's one of the all-time freaky, scary kind of scenes in cinema, because when you first see this guy Leatherface, he just comes out of the middle of nowhere, right, and just pops one of these guys in the head, drags him back into his little like refrigerator room, and there's no music, there's no nothing, that's all you see, and it's very, very startling, right? Very good kind of choice of scenery and whatnot there. It's very well done. It scares the hell out of you, because just something's wrong, but you haven't really seen anything like this yet, and then this guy just out of nowhere. So this is kind of like an early version of like the slasher, right? The slasher stuff, that's more like an 80s thing, right? With like your Freddy and Jason kind of stuff. Texas Chainsaw, I think, was like sort of the start of that genre. And I guess this right here is just supposed to be like a background with like trees, and because it's Texas too, right? There's no green, like everything in like the landscape and like the scenery, it's all dead and brown, so that kind of adds to just sort of the overall creepiness factor of this movie. And Leatherface, right? He did become kind of like a horror movie icon. So unfortunately, they did make about 110 different sequels to this, and prequels and all that kind of stuff. So just commercial Hollywood, you can't let a good thing just simmer. They gotta just keep going back to the well. So I think now in some of these movies too, like they get way into detail about like the origins of these characters, and this crazy cannibal family that lives out in Texas. And I don't know, I don't think you really need to know that stuff. Like, kind of like what I was saying yesterday about The Thing. It almost makes it better when you're kind of just left to your own devices to decide, right? You don't need to know that Leatherface was abused as a child, or no. It's like they get way too cutesy with all like the details, and everybody has to have an origin story, and I don't really care about how he became Leatherface. Just show me the movie, all right? But I don't think it was ever intended to be like a big franchise, right? It was just a low budget movie. I don't know how much like the original creators had to do with any of that stuff that came after too. But I remember I saw one. I was just bored, and I watched one that I think came out in like 2013. Yeah, and it was horrible. They were like really like, because they do this a lot in movies too. Like, you can't just have something that's evil, right? You gotta make like this sad, like, again, like, oh, he was abused as a child or something, kind of backstory to why he becomes like a maniac. And that's Hollywood. But the original, again, that'll always hold up. And one of my what I think is just one of the freakiest scenes in the movie is when they meet the entire family, right? So they already got like half their party, gets killed by Leatherface, and they're all sitting around like the dinner table, right? And they bust out Grandpa. So Grandpa Leatherface, I guess. And Grandpa is like, I swear he's like 115 years old, right? Like, you don't even know how old this guy is. And I think he's got like, he's wearing like one of them leathery faces too, from one of the victims. And Grandpa, because he's over 100 years old, can barely function. So, they're kind of torturing these kids here, and one of the girls, I think they hold them up to Grandpa, and they give Grandpa they give him a hammer, right? And they tell Grandpa just to start swinging at her head. And Grandpa could barely lift anything, so he's like dropping it, but it's still hitting her on the head, and she's just like screaming, and yeah, ugh, freaky stuff. And I think after that, like, she eventually like gets lucky and like lands in a kick or a punch or something, and then jumps out the window, runs away as she's got this chainsaw wielding maniac going after her. And then it kind of turns in the morning, she's still running. I think there's only one survivor in this movie, right? Can't remember if there was one or two. I'm pretty sure it was just one. And so she runs into a truck driver, in the morning, and he picks her up as Leatherface couldn't catch her. He's still behind there, just revving up that chainsaw, and then the movie ends, right? That's another one where it's like they ended it at the right spot, right? They got away. Don't really need to know what happened after that, right? This poor girl is probably traumatized for life, easily. And I don't know, maybe in one of the sequels, like, she's in it or something. I have no idea. I really don't have any desire to see any of those. Yeah, I'm sure with like the 80s and stuff, with like those kind of movies becoming way more popular, I'm sure there was a commercial kind of demand to get more stuff out like that. And if you're one of like the original sort of creators of this franchise, who knows, right? They wave some money in front of your face and it's good enough. I'll take it. Do whatever you want with them. So yeah, we're just doing the original one here. And some of the like the sound effects are kind of iconic in this movie, right? Like when they're so when the movie starts, right, they're saying, this was based on a true story. The movie starts with the aftermath, right? I guess maybe like the police showed up at the aftermath of this massacre or something, and they're just taking pictures. And whenever they take these pictures, right, they get this weird like kind of noise, and that's like synonymous with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre right now. It's just it's one of those noises like you never heard it like in anything like in real life, so it's like it's just so linked to that movie. It's like you can't not think about it when you hear that noise. And of course the revving chainsaw too, right? The rusty old chainsaw. So they definitely made it sound all beat up and clunky, which definitely kind of adds to the freakiness factor too. Like this guy's running around with a chainsaw that probably hasn't seen any maintenance for 12 years, so it's all beat up, but it still does the job for what he's trying to do. So yeah, I'm including this movie because, again, this isn't like a top 7 or anything like that. These are just ones that I kind of have an appreciation for what they did for the genre, for Halloween. And this one I like because, you know, again, they kind of went out of their way to make it like dirty and low budget, and then the whole fact that they tried to like kind of sell this as like something that actually happened, you know, in the 70s. Like, that's pretty freaking cool, right? And you saw that a lot in other movies much later on. You actually saw it early on too, because like the original Night of the Living Dead, right? That was a movie that was made on $14 and, you know, had no budget, but no music either, and it just kind of added to the whole, like, is this a movie, or is this like did somebody actually film this happening? So you can do a lot with a little, right? Everything has such big budgets now, it almost kind of takes the heart and soul out of the genre. But yeah, like I was saying before, this kind of like, you know, making you think it was like a real thing or something. They've done that in a lot of other movies, right? That was a big part of what was that movie in like the mid 2000s with the giant Cloverfield, right? They were trying to sell that as like, you know, the whole movie was filmed with like their camcorders and cell phones, and so they tried to make it like a real thing. Another big one, obviously, Blair Witch, right? The Blair Witch Project in the late 90s. I remember everybody was talking about how that was real, and because they didn't even bother with like professional cameras and stuff for that. That was like purely like amateur, and you know, that absolutely helped with like how they marketed that movie. So it's a good horror trope, right? Trying to make your audience think that this was something that actually happened. Definitely adds to the spooky factor. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1974 edition, right? That's the one we're doing. All-time classic in the horror movie genre. Definitely, I think, inspired a lot of the slasher films of the 80s. And it's definitely an iconic horror movie, iconic Halloween theme. You know, you always see somebody dressed as Leatherface, right, on Halloween, right? There's always a Leatherface costume somewhere. So he's right up there with Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers. You know, he's in the Hall of Fame of the horror movie killers. So there you go. That's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We're going to keep going this week, so tune in tomorrow and let me know what you think. Like, comment, and subscribe. Happy Halloween, and I will see you on the next video.